All right. Thank you all for joining. This is The Experience. I'm Abram Dyke. I'm with my guest, Bo, here. Um, I have plenty of questions for her, so I'm just going to kind of get into it. What was your earliest memory?
My earliest memory is standing in a dirt road in the hot sun outside of a refugee camp in Thailand. I'm with my sister and brother, and we're waiting for my mom to come home. She, at the time, worked two jobs during the day and at nighttime. And in the daytime, she would be working as hired labor for any farms. Um, And then that time she pretty much sews, so she's kind of like a seamstress, and she makes clothing for anybody who would give her a commission. Um, and we're waiting for my mom to come home because obviously we're hungry, but she is our only guardian. She was a single mother at the time, our only parent and family that we have in that camp. Um, so on a normal day, if my mom makes enough money, which is like cents on the US dollar, I don't know if it was like 3 cents or 6 cents, I forget. But she makes enough money that day, then we get to eat. And if she doesn't, then we would just go without. And getting to eat is like one meal a day for all of us. And that's not like each of us get a meal. It is basically all four of us sharing one bowl of pho. um, and what that looks like is just a bowl with broth, noodles, a piece of chicken, and like sprinkles of green onions. Um, and that's how we have lived and survived in the refugee camp for years. And my mom had lived there for 8 years. And then I came along 2 years, 2.5 maybe years before we left the camp. But and before I came along, there was three of them, so that's how they lived. The three of them lived for like 6 years before I came along.
That's a lot. That's crazy. So hunger was a definite constant for you.
There's a yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of famine. The camp was very congested, and there's like thousands of people there, so it's very full of diseases as well. And that's how I ended up in the hospital a couple of months before we got sponsored to come to the U.S. And I was just talking about this with you earlier. What that looks like is if anybody needed medical attention and they couldn't pay for it, couldn't afford the treatment, then they would get their picture taken. So a patient would get their picture taken, potential patient, and it will go up on the wall of all the people who needs medical treatment, and whoever can pay for it, like a donation or charity, or can perform the surgery, will pick a picture, and that patient or that person can get the treatment they need. So I was very, very sick, and I had this infection, and I needed surgery um, as like a 2-year-old. And they told my mom all they could do is take a picture of me and put it up on that wall. And the day my picture went up, a woman came along, picked my photo, and then also performed the surgery on me, paid for it herself,
That's
and performed the surgery on me
yeah.
because she was a doctor.
Hmm.
And another memory I have of her is she literally took a marker and wrote my name in three big letters on my stomach, like BAO. She couldn't remember my name. And every day she'll stop by to see me and see how I'm doing. And that woman is also responsible for feeding my mom every day because my mom didn't have any money. Every day she'll give my mom like it's like $1 and like 1 baht in Thailand.
Hmm.
It's like equivalent of $1 in Thailand. And that would buy her a bowl of pho. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So like that is an insane amount of kindness, but also like a very lucky thing to have happened that she liked the way you looked, like
As a child was
yeah,
like this kid,
yeah, she's
right?
cute. Let's go.
And didn't even know that that was the first day my picture went up. And performed a surgery on me that saved my life because this it was a flesh eating bacteria.
Oh
It's an
wow.
infection. Yeah.
That's some
Yeah.
serious stuff.
Yeah. And I was and paid for my stay for 2 months in a hospital. Paid for my mom to have a meal a day. And then we as soon as I got out of the hospital, we got sponsored to come here to the US. But We just, at the time, we just didn't know what was going to happen.
Oh, yeah. And so life at the refugee camp, there's a lot of refugees. What are they refugees from?
So, majority of the refugees in that camp were Hmong people,
Mhm.
and there were other people there as well who were just victims of war, who were also, Laos and Vietnamese. Um, but so during the Vietnam War,
Mhm.
the U.S. and the CIA recruited the Hmong people, which they documented like over 35,000 people or so. I don't remember if it was 30 or 35,000. People can actually check this on. I have a website here from, believe, an article published by UC Davis at ucdavis.edu titled The Hmong and the Secret War. And they can actually go there and read more about it. But the Hmong people were recruited to help with the war effort to navigate the land and as soldiers, really, on the front line. Um, and in return, the promise was that we will have refuge here in the US, right?
Mhm.
Everyone who fought in the war and their families. But that was promised, and it wasn't what happened at all. And that's why the refugee camps existed.
Mhm.
Because after the war, the US pretty much took their soldiers and left and just didn't mention us and didn't come back for us at all. I think there was maybe one plane for probably the higher up soldiers, the generals and their families, but not everyone
Mhm.
came to America right away. I mean, the camps lasted for so long. That was created, and it was not created by the U.S. It was created because after the war efforts and after all that stuff ended, uh, the Hmong people faced persecution, right? And we had to flee. Our people fled into the jungles, into the caves, um, just to hide from what was happening to them, which is like villages were gone, um, just like thousands and thousands of people who were a part of the war or not. They faced the same treatment afterwards, and I think it took a very long time, took years for journalists from the UN and from the US to be brave enough to come back over enemy lines to get real footage and real images of this happening to prove that, hey, you guys recruited these people and now this is happening to them.
Mhm.
So you have to help them.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the
Yeah.
message. And then the camps were created.
Mhm.
Pretty much the U.S. said if you can get across the border, which was the Mekong River from Laos to Thailand, then there are these camps. And if you can get to these camps, then we can start, processing um, legalization for the Hmong people to get over to the U.S. But then that was also a process, right?
Mhm.
That was also a process because it didn't just happen right away for people. No, it took years. Some people, yes, within a couple of years, they were able to get here through sponsorship, and that looked different for everybody. It could be like families willing to sponsor them, organizations willing to sponsor them. Um, and then after, I don't know, 8 years, my mom got sponsored by her cousins who were already here. And some people, it took 15 or 20 years, and some people just never made it out of the camps. Even after the camps shut down, about like more than 10,000 people were just ushered away into like the wilderness, basically. Um, and they were, there was a documentary on this called The White River, and I just want to mention this. And I don't know if anybody will ever see this documentary again, ever, because it was so long ago. I think I was like 18 or 19 was when I was watching this, but it was just footage of like these Hmong Americans who heard about this, who wanted to see if it was real, that over 10,000 people are just living on this white river in tarps and cardboard papers. Um, and so they went back to Thailand
Mhm.
to see, with cameras, and they just documented it. And it was real. It was just like it was like miles and miles of just people camped out on this river living in tarps. Like you're talking about like full on families and babies who were just born that day. Um, I don't know, it's just generations of people who are in their seniors to people who are in, their 30s and 40s to like young little kids just running around, kids who don't even know how to talk yet, and they're just all out here. Um, um, I don't know at the time that the feeling that I had. I don't have a word for it. I think I was just very angry, and I was like 19, and I didn't understand what was happening. But I knew these were people that came from the camps that the Hmong people came from, and they had nowhere to go. And we had this promise that was given to us that if we gave men, women, and children, and you can look this up because we did give children to the war, like young boys as young as 11 years of age were recruited to be soldiers. There's images of it. There's documentaries of it. There's real files on this. And uh, and just watching our people in the aftermath, uh, trying to survive in harsh conditions with famine on this white river. It seems so. I don't know what's the word for it. Upsetting is not even the word for it.
Yeah. Well, it's
Like
the biggest neglect I could ever imagine in my life. Like leaving.
it feels like we were lied to.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. For you, and like just how awful that situation could be, in my opinion. That is a promise failed is the worst kind of thing.
But being a young person and learning about this, living that life, and then getting out of it, and then learning about it, that is still ongoing.
Yeah, it's not.
Was upsettingly, I don't know, on a different level of emotions. I just can't explain it. There's like no words for it right now.
Yeah,
and what's more upsetting for me at the time was like there was nothing I could do about it. I was just another person watching what was happening. There's just nothing I could do about it at the time.
Right.
And I think that's the feeling that the people who went over to see it for themselves, and there was nothing they could do about it. All they could do was like document it and bring it back to the Hmong people to show them, because it was just like documentaries made by Hmong people for Hmong people here in the U.S. Yeah, nobody else was seeing this.
Somebody has to. So to me, the things that you're telling me sounds a lot different than the things that I was taught or heard from. Like, why do you think there's that disconnect?
So this is like a very tragic chapter of history. And it's known as the Secret War. And I think that's because it was kept a secret. And it's not really acknowledged today, or any of the years that has gone by is very rarely acknowledged. It's not taught in history classes, and it's not in history book, but it is a part of American history. It is definitely, if the CIA has files on this, right, that they recruited these people to fight with them, with their soldiers in the war, it is a part of American history. And I just want to say that I'm not quoting what history teachers say, but I'm just going to make a point of his point by kind of paraphrasing some of the stuff he said in class. And this is me going back to college in my 30s at UWL, which is the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And I had a great history teacher, and he was very passionate about the history of America and the history of the world. And he was teaching things that are very important with, lots of factual articles and documentations. But he said something like, the truth is, history is often written by the rich and powerful, by politicians who shape the narrative to their own liking, right? So basically, the rich and powerful politicians will only put in history books what they like, what looks good on paper, which is like what makes America look good. They don't want to put the ugly things in, the harsh things in, the harsh realities and the harsh truth in, because it makes America look bad.
Right.
And it's okay to acknowledge the ugly truth and the bad history of America, because we're made up of so many different people from so many backgrounds. We're basically a melting pot. and it's good to learn all these terrible things because so we don't repeat them.
Right. The point of
as a nation.
Yeah.
Right? Learn
Absolutely.
from him and hey, this happened,
Mhm.
40 years ago. And guess what? It's happening again today.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
We have refugees today.
Right.
We have refugees 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And it is good to acknowledge that these are displaced people and they need our help. Their lives aren't easy. They already have lost their country, their culture, things that make them who they are, their identity. They're at risk of losing their identity. They're in a completely foreign country with nothing but the clothes on their back and their families. If they're lucky, their families.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember a conversation we had previously. You were talking about how your uncle, when he was crossing the Mekong River, um, what he had like his friend with him was it
Oh, my teacher.
teacher? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Another person in our community, right? At
Mhm.
UWL here in La Crosse. I have a Hmong teacher. I took 2 classes with him. Hmong 1 and Hmong 2.
Mhm.
Basically, reading and writing Hmong, right?
Sure.
In the history of Hmong.
Yeah.
And we got to talking about, the war in our own history. And his personal experience was when he had to cross the river, the Mekong River. There was like other people behind him, right? And this is on a rack. They build like these racks with like bamboo.
Rafts.
Rafts.
Yeah.
Rack. Did I just say rack?
Yeah. Sweet.
We
Yeah.
can cut that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Rafts.
Okay, so the way they cross the river is by night, and they build rafts out of bamboo um, and wood, and they would cross with their family members or whoever they can, small groups at a time. And one of my instructors, his uh, experience was that when he was crossing, behind him in a different raft was his best friend, his childhood friend that he grew up with, who lived in the same village, right? And that person's family was with them. One moment they were on the river, and the next they were gone.
Mhm.
It was just him. He made it over without people he grew up with. A similar event happened with one of my aunts, right? Because she's remarried in the States here, and she has a whole nother family. But her first family completely wiped out by the river. It's just devastating to see the loss of people just and it's this or our lives, right? If we stay
Mhm.
behind the border, enemy lines, then they're going to get us anyway,
Yeah.
right? Our lives are in danger.
Yeah.
So if we cross the river, which we don't know how to swim, the Hmong people are mountain people. I just want to clarify that they are farmers. They grow and live off the land, right? They raise their own live cattle. They plant and they eat everything they plant. Pretty much live off the land, right?
Mhm.
They don't know how to swim, and until that, they had to just cross the largest river in the southeast of Asia.
Yeah.
And make it across to Thailand. That's how big the river is, that it's dividing two different countries, right?
Yeah. Right.
And to do that during night, at night, in silently, so that you don't get discovered. I don't know. There's just so much at stake, and for people who don't even know how to swim, the river would just take them. And if they're lucky, they'll make it across the river. And then they're not knowing where the heck they are, they still have to go on foot and make it to the refugee camp.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the amount of loss and like trauma in the entire experience of just even getting here is unimaginable to me. And then people saying like you're lucky
That you made it across.
you made it across, or that you're here or whatever.
Yeah, here's another story I've heard from firsthand accounts is people brave enough to go back over the river to get their families.
Mm-hmm.
So say you made it across.
Yeah.
And you left your mother and your wife behind. You go back for them. Mm-hmm. You cross the same river again and try to backtrack and try to find them in the wilderness, and then navigate that river again to go back to the refugee camp.
Yeah.
those are real stories.
Mm-hmm.
People have done this.
It's wild. Yeah. So what was you finally get over to America? What was America like for your family?
Okay, so we're here in the U.S. My mom, from her stories, she received $200,
Mm-hmm.
right, from the government.
Monthly?
No,
Just once.
just once. Just that one time when we got here.
Okay.
Upon arrival.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
My mom was given $200, and then we all got our paperwork. We got vaccinated, like a bunch of vaccines. We didn't really know what they were at the time, but yes, it's just like normal vaccines that people will get before they enter the U.S. as like permanent residents.
Yeah.
We got green cards, our residency cards, and then we got taken in by the families that sponsored us, which was two of our uncles. We lived in the same apartment with them, so it was a one-bedroom apartment, and there was three families living in there. My uncles each had a wife, and they both have kids, and then my mom and the four of us. So
how many total?
I don't know, probably about 11 of us was living together.
Jeez.
And that's how it was for years. Like even when we moved around, that's always how it's been. We would room with a family, and at one point there's like 10 people in one bedroom. That's like myself, my mother, my siblings, and then like a bunch of nieces and nephews that were so much younger than all of us. We were just all staying inside the same bedroom. And I vividly remember when the first time we got our own apartment. Every apartment was infested. Every apartment I've ever lived in throughout my whole entire childhood until like I became an adult had like rats and what are those, cockroaches. I was like, what are those things that run around?
Little skittery things.
Every time you turn on the lights, you see them. Right. And but that was so normal for us. Like we just thought it was like a normal thing. We just thought every house had it. Had them, these rodents, right? And it was a step up because we have carpet now, right? In the refugee camp, it was just literally I think I told you this already, like a one room shack made out of bamboo, right? And fibers and trees.
Whatever they can find.
Yeah, whatever they can scavenge at the time. And it was either like a 5x5 room or 8x8 room, right? And your whole entire family lives there and sleeps there and eats there. So there will be like the stove will be in the corner where the fire is, and that's how they live for all the seasons, all the years, the whole entire time they are in the camp.
Yeah. So this was an upgrade.
Yeah, this was an upgrade. This is an upgrade. We just at the time we didn't know we were poor. I didn't know we were poor. Like I didn't know that we were living in poverty until like somebody told me in school. A kid told me, like, my classmate was like, "You're poor." I was like, "What is that?" At the time, I didn't know what poor was. Right? I just thought everything was normal. You know. But yeah, that was our normal lives for years and years, and that's how we grew up. And I remember in like the 5th or 6th grade, my mom was able to move out on our own. We were able to move out on our own. My mom did it for us, obviously. And we got like this 1-bedroom apartment, but the ceiling leaked in every room.
Wow.
Even the bathroom.
That's impressive.
There was right. It's better than the bamboos that were also leaking in Thailand.
Yes, right.
when it rained. But and it was warmer in that apartment. But we had to put like pots and bowls out every time it rained because it was leaking. Even like all around where we're sleeping on the floor. So we slept on the floor for years, and we just had to know there was like a pot next to your feet or a pot next to your head.
Won't be taking your place.
You just grow accustomed to like the rain dripping into those pots and bowls. But yeah, that's how we lived for a long time. And I just couldn't tell the difference as a child. It was like, I think this was our normal life and it was okay with me.
Yeah. I like looking back, I remember like seeing Hmong people at the train park, like, where like the train factory thing is. And there was just a lot of people all the time coming out of houses. And like, I never thought it's because they are poor. I always thought it was like this is a cultural thing. They all like living together, but no, it's like abject poverty and
Yeah.
not that at all. I mean, that might be the innocence or ignorance of a child's brain, but at the time, that's kind of what I thought. It was like, oh, this is their culture. They like to all live together, but it's like, no, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. And there was not a lot of assistance at the time, like
Yeah.
today, where people have a lot of government assistance or financial assistance from different programs that are available to them.
Yeah.
Those weren't, available at the time
Sure.
that we were growing up.
Yeah.
And
$200 once. And
once.
somebody that knows you had to select you to come here. So
Yeah.
it seemed like America didn't really have to do much
No.
of the heavy lifting for any.
There wasn't any like job training programs where they will train the adults to go to put job placements for them. None of that happened. No English classes so they can learn how to read and write. None of that stuff happened for them. Obviously, like the kids are in a better place where they can actually go into the school system and start getting an education. But those adults did not have that. They pretty much got thrown right into the workforce wherever, anywhere, in any place that would take them for any kind of wage, really.
Yeah.
My mom worked less than minimum wage for years and years. Like, she would make $35 a day, and that's how we lived.
That's wild. That's very much taking advantage of a situation.
Yeah, I think, like you're not like the only person who wasn't aware of this. Last year, I met a U.S. veteran who fought during the same time in like a different war overseas. I think he was part of it was World War II, and I think he was part of like a group that did not fight in the front line, but they did something else. I forgot what he told me, but he said that it was he had it much better than his other comrades who were like in the battlefield, right? But he told me, this is just last year, 2024, and I met him in Green Bay. And over the course of 2 days and talking to him, we gotten to know each other more. He asked more questions about me and my background, and I asked more questions about him, and because he had an interesting background as a veteran, so we were talking back and forth, and we were just discovering things about each other, each other's lives, and how we got here, right, to the U.S., how our families got here. And you can see the shock on his face, because when he learns about how we were involved in the war, because he know about Hmong people. He's like, oh yeah, you're Hmong. I know about the Hmong people. But then he realized he didn't know about the Hmong people.
Yeah.
Because when I tell him these stories, you can see the confusion on his face. And almost like in shock, like he was lied to, right? Because then he said, wait a minute. We were told that all Hmong people who came here to the U.S. got cars, new cars, and houses. It wasn't like that, and I was like, no, I don't know who got those things, because it wasn't like that for anybody.
No,
not at all. And I was like, I didn't get like dental care until the 7th grade. I never saw the dentist until the 7th grade. I was like, I don't understand where you got the news from. He's like, we were all told this. Me and my comrades, me and my friends, me and my my families. It was because to him it was upsetting that this group of people who came here to the U.S. got these benefits and they didn't, and they fought for the war too, right? And he said that what they got was if you came back, you got like a medal, a recognition, right, from the war. And if you died in the war, then your family, the term was they bought a farm, because they would get like a certain amount of money that was enough to buy a little piece of land at the time. So like he could hear people saying like, oh, so-and-so bought the farm. So-and-so's family bought a farm, meaning they passed away and their family got the money. That was the term they used at the time, which is what he told me. I've never heard of the term before.
Sure.
But he was like, yeah, that's how we were rewarded. And for us to hear that, the Hmong people came over and they got, all these things that made their lives better. it just didn't sound right or fair.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, that wasn't true.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you heard that from. Who
Right.
told you?
Totally.
But that wasn't true. That's not the
Yeah.
case at all. And this was last year in 2024 from a veteran.
Yeah, that's wild. And
Misinformation.
yeah. That kind of stuff is super frustrating and kind of another good reason why we're having this conversation today. I think it's wild that you have people fighting for America. Some are Hmong, some are Americans, and one is completely abandoned, and the other one, like they still got paid for hours of fighting, and they also, if someone did actually lose their life, there was compensation. When we abandoned the Hmong people, there was many more massacres, much more death, and like there was no counterbalance, and there was struggles, and there was no American support structure to even get you here. It was all seemed very much decentralized and more on your population to figure out than America to try to help.
Right.
And that sucks. Yeah.
It did.
So what barriers did you and your parents face becoming a United States citizen?
Considering that I am fluent in English, there wasn't a lot of barriers for me other than studying the history of the U.S. and like civics, which includes, I have a list here. Again, the U.S. history, government, the fundamental principles, and like the constitutions and the Bill of Rights. And then an example is like, who is like the fifth president?
Yeah, how many people would be able to pass that?
Who was the 35th president, right? Who was the 15th president? Or why was like the act, or what is the Slavery Act? And why was it passed? Right? Those are similar to some of the questions that I was studying for and were on the written test. And then you get like 10 interview verbal tests. Like you get put into this room. This is just my experience.
Yeah.
I get put into this room.
This is what we want, your experience.
I think there's like a police officer or somebody in the corner kind of like there for safety or security.
Sure.
And then
intimidation.
Yeah, I don't know. And then the interviewer is very like I don't know, one dimension and blunt. Like they don't have any emotions or anything. So when they're asking you these questions, literally like no sense of hint or anything.
Don't know if you're wrong or right.
You can basically be talking to a robot, but this person is just there, which is good, I guess. Like zero bias, I hope. And they ask you about like 10 questions or so, and you have to get more than 50% of them correct to pass this face-to-face interview verbal test, right?
Yeah.
And again, there are these questions about the U.S. history, about the government, about the constitutions and the Bill of Rights. And then, so I passed after studying for like 6 months, and I was in my early 20s. I think I was like 23. I just didn't want to renew my my green card, which is like $600 when it costs the same to take the citizenship test.
Yeah.
exact amount.
Yeah, one or the other.
So I decided to do that. My mom, on the other hand, it was much different for her. She took it and failed back to back for 6 years. Huge barriers, language barrier. She can't read or write. She speaks minimal English. She understands when people are talking to her, but if they're talking too fast, she can't break down exactly the context of what they're saying to her. She can have a conversation, like a normal conversation with somebody in English, but very, very minimal exchange from her. But she will understand what you're trying to say to her, what you're asking for, or what you need. And so for her, she would go into this program where she gets tutored on the U.S. history, on all that information, right? The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the presidents. She learned about all the presidents. This is for a person who can't read or write, who can identify a picture of a president, what year he was president for, his name, and she did this for years and years and years. And then she took the test and failed for 6 years in a row. But every year that she failed, she would take the class again. It's like a it's like a program where they teach people all these history of the U.S. For the citizenship, right?
Yeah.
It's literally a program for that. So every year she'll pay X amount of money for this program to relearn all these information, and then every year she'll pay the amount of money you need to take that test again to fail that test again.
Jeez.
6 years it took her to pass the citizenship test.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part is the interview, the face-to-face interview inside that little room. I think that was probably a huge barrier for her, because
Absolutely.
if the interviewer is asking these questions verbally, and asking them in a pace or a tone where my mom can't really identify or see, because it's different when you're seeing the information in front of you, right? People learn differently.
Yeah.
When you're seeing like the words, you can identify words and phrases, and reading
and you can take your time
to
piecemeal it
to look at it and be like, oh, they're asking about this. But if someone's verbally talking to you, if you're not seeing the words that you have been studying for years pop out at you, right? You can't identify with them. You can't identify these pictures of this president or the Bill of Rights or what this looks like at all. I think that's what was really hard for her, was inside this room with this interviewer. So I know that my parents went through a much more difficult time trying to pass the citizenship than I did. And I feel like if they were to give this test to U.S. born citizens who are young, I mean, like any age, maybe.
Sure.
But I'm just saying people who actually went through history class in the school system, I don't think they would pass it.
Yeah.
I don't think, unless they actually studied for it.
Right. Yes. Or took that class.
Right.
But, yeah.
I don't think they would pass.
Right. And it's the thing that I'm kind of bummed to hear is that it is the same exorbitant cost every single year. So, $600 for the test times 6, that's $3,600.
I don't even know how much it is right now, but at the time when I took it was $600.
I don't know if it's changed or not. Maybe that's something I can look up and talk about later. But yeah, either way, $600, and you're already impoverished.
Yeah.
So like saving up that every single year has got to be just like a scary task, and you're nervous because you're throwing away what is like months of your revenue to hopefully become a citizen, so you don't have to re-up on your green card every year.
Right.
That's the type of scary, like it's hard. Like you think you have test anxiety, just being a normal human. How about try being a person wanting to have a citizenship and not having the resource to do it every time.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people who don't test well at all either.
Yeah. That's it's kind of crazy. My dad went through the citizenship situation, and he filled out one of the paperwork things wrong and had to reapply and
all over again.
Yeah. I think he ended up spending too much money as well, but like just I want people to understand it's not an easy process.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy test.
Here's another strange thing that happens during the citizenship test. So you pass. Let's say you pass. In the room, in the interview room, let's say that you get all the questions asked and you pass, or whether you pass or not. They also ask you that if you pass and you get citizenship to the U.S., do you vow to obey and serve the U.S. with your assets and your life? Like, vaguely, those are the words. But basically, like, you're vowing loyalty and your assets and your life to the U.S. is what they want. And you have to say yes, or you fail that question, you fail that test.
Yeah.
It has to be a yes.
Right.
Those questions, just because people are born here in the U.S., they don't get to vow to any of those questions. Right. They don't get to say yes to any of those questions.
Yeah. They get to say the Pledge of Allegiance when they're like...
No, it's freedom of speech.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, we do whatever we want, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding and just kind of a lot of wedges and a lot of divides that have been happening over time that kind of like lead us to isolation and or just negativity, racism, whatever else. How do you think we can improve on those things?
I think so. There's a lot of like mistrust in the community. Another thing is, I feel like there's like a mutual respect that everybody needs to start developing for each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because in a public space, I want somebody to respect me as a human being in my space, right?
Yeah.
And that person wants the same back as well. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think that's just something we can extend to each other and have for one another, despite anyone's background, despite what anyone is or want to be. Um, because growing up with discrimination and prejudice, having those things thrown at me for being who I am and the way I look and the way I talk. I just told you, like a week ago or two, my mom and I were out in public and we were just doing our errands, shopping in public spaces and stores, and people would stare at us when we talk, and the stare would linger so long it made us uncomfortable, right? Or even when we get out of our car and we don't say anything yet and we're on our way to the store from the parking lot, the stares that we would get from somebody that was going into the same store, the lingering long stares that make us uncomfortable, I think are not good, right? It's
Right.
rude. If a child stared at us, it's fine. They're curious. But if an adult is staring for way too long for the wrong reasons, it's just rude.
Yeah.
Have some respect.
Right.
Everyone's a human being, right?
Yeah.
I think it starts with mutual respect. But also, like, I believe, like, because of the mistrust and misinformation that's happening, people should start obviously doing their own research to find real sources of news, find the truth, and to also learn some knowledge themselves that they didn't have before they come to conclusions about anybody, about any background, about any situation. And There's this thing I think people are lacking in each other and even in themselves among their own community, which I would say my personal experience in the Hmong community, there's a lot of distrust among our community of people. And that's largely due to the war and the aftermath of it, like the refugee camp, just the years of prejudice and the years of persecution, the years of just famine and then poverty, and coming here and still facing those similar things, right? Just a different kind of struggle here in America. We're still facing those things just differently here in America. It's a different fight here, and that shouldn't happen in America. I don't feel like the land of the free is very, very much what it was supposed to be, like the way that we were told this is like the land where dreams come true and everyone's equal and there's freedom here, and that stuff is like not very true to us. It doesn't feel that way, right? And I can see that within our community here in La Crosse, with the Hmong community, with my experience working in a nonprofit with them, because again, inequality, right? During the COVID-19 pandemic, small businesses were getting like small business loans and financial aid, and different government programs were helping them. But then the Hmong farmers who were also running small businesses for farmers market every year for the last, 25 plus years, were not getting these opportunities, and people were losing their businesses. And downsizing on their land and at markets, like they weren't going to all the markets because they weren't making a living. But it was just hard, like, because these booths, they cost money, right? You had to rent these booths at the market. Everything costs money to run your business. I started a nonprofit to kind of bring awareness to that. I started a nonprofit to raise money for them. And for the first couple of years, some of them didn't want my help. They were afraid to take the help. They were afraid to take like the money we raised to help them, offset some of this cost, or to purchase starter seeds, or to fix the car that broke down, or to like replace the tiller that exploded, or whatever they needed, right? I started this nonprofit to essentially just like advocate for them and help them become more sustainable. But they were afraid to take the help, and I got like yelled at and chased away and chewed out a little bit until like I just kept going for a couple more years and just showing up for them and reassuring them, hey, I don't need anything from you, I don't want anything from you, but we set up these programs to help you if you need it, and they're here if you need it.
Yeah.
You know, that was pretty much it, and it was just over the years building trust. I think it starts with like a layer of trust, building trust, and reassuring these people that about their safety with me, and their confidence with me, and like that I'm here to help them.
Yeah.
So again, a layer of trust is what we can do to build bridges, to bridge communities, and to we can meet each other halfway.
Yeah.
We can both build these bridges, or somebody can just start building it. And I don't know, but trust is fundamental.
Absolutely. I like I think a lot of prejudice is raised on just not knowing about somebody, and like there's so many people that like to assume, or they have this like survival inherent in them where if they don't understand it, it must be dangerous, or it must be something not great.
The fear, right?
The
fear of not knowing. The fear, the thought, just the thought of not knowing about somebody and their intentions, and they might cause harm to you, then all of a sudden just like creates this fear that doesn't even exist. Right. That's not even real. It's just, what is it? Like, narratives are facts, right? Like, is that real? Like, is what you're creating in your mind, or what the narrative from this person is saying is real?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you have to weigh that out, and like I said, do your research and find out the truth for yourself so you can be properly informed, as a human being. Because I think at the end of it, everybody wants to be safe, right?
Yes.
They want to feel safe in their own neighborhoods, in public spaces. They want to feel safe in the classrooms, and they just want to have food, like in a shelter, like that's the basic fundamental.
Water, shelter, maybe joy. I don't know.
Happiness can that's something else. But at the bottom line, everybody wants to be safe. Yeah. Just give them their safe space. You don't have to take something away from somebody out of fear.
Right. Yeah. Like if you witness somebody speaking in a different language, they're not instantly talking bad about you.
No.
They're just talking in the language that they know best, or is most comfortable, that they feel safe in using, and don't take that away. Yeah.
And us talking in Hmong is great, and I think we should continue to do it more, just as every culture should. But specifically from our culture and our history, we're at risk of losing our language, right? Because of the assimilation here in America, Hmong Americans. A lot of Hmong Americans, the younger generation, don't speak Hmong, read or write, or understand our culture as deeply as the older generations do. And that puts us not only at risk of losing our language, but our culture, our identity. Old folklores are orally passed down, right? Traditions like marriage ceremony and funeral ceremonies, they will never be the same in 20 years, unless somebody studies them and continues them. These traditions that we have for our people, blessing ceremonies and rites, passages of rites, protection for carrying the new year, whatever it is, we're not going to have it in 20 years. It won't be the same. Some of the fears that an older generation have today is when they're gone and someone's in charge of their funeral, the rights won't be given to them the same that they done for their parents. The traditional rights, the way they want it done. It won't be done the same. Yeah. And that's so sad. Right.
It's super sad. Well, and especially if it's a religious connotation, this is my what death should be.
Yeah.
And then either there's no one to understand the words that are being spoke.
Yeah.
Or they just aren't even spoken anymore. Is that going to be the same for them? Or their other ancestors, if they believe it, we can assume that it's true for them. So why not allow that comfort, and why not try to support that? I really wish that there was more people that whenever there was an unknown or a question, instead of insecurity or fear, curiosity was there. or just like understanding that every human wants food, water, shelter, but like also they want happiness. Like who
Yeah.
doesn't want happiness? And like with that, you can build so many more bridges.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned this to you before, but
Yeah.
I've mentioned this to like someone close to me a while back because we were talking about like uh, the political climate today and all the news and everything that's happening. And we have different perspectives because we were brought up differently. But this is someone close to me, and we love and understand each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling them, I don't know if you know how it feels like to be in a constant mode of surviving. I was like, survivor mode. I was like, I feel that way on a daily basis. And sometimes I feel like that all the time. And I'm so tired of it. And it's draining. It's the energy you put into like constantly watching your back when you're going somewhere or just on a brisk walk, around your own neighborhood. You're constantly turning around to see if you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of women feel this way. But from like a woman who is like me and brought up in a household where we have conversations about like if you leave be careful because xyz,
Mm-hmm.
and every day you hear the words, okay, well, be careful, be safe out there. It's a strange conversation to have all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels weird. Like,
Right.
be
Yeah,
safe out there. That's not a fun.
it's a strange
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, and like I want to give my mom so much credit for being a single mother coming here and just like getting thrown into this new world and just surviving and raising us all in like a foreign place and with a foreign language and have to relearn this whole new living system and just making it. And I feel like she never had the time, like people like her and her generation don't have the time to address their trauma, to address what happened to them, right?
Yeah.
Because they're in constant survival mode.
Right.
Right? They're here now. Now they have to make ends meet, get thrown into the work field and start working and start raising your kids, and then protect your family, make sure they're safe, And that's why we live in small communities among like our relatives, the Hmong people. They usually live in an area where their relatives are, just to have a sense of community. But I think the bottom line is like mutual understanding, building trust, and having compassion for one another without understanding. You don't have to understand who they are. True. Or what the background is or what they're going through. Or you don't have to understand someone's situation or suffering. True. To have a certain amount of compassion for a human being.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. We all have the same wants and needs to survive and or to be happy. Like that's who doesn't want that? And if you're an inhibitor of that, like what kind of life do you lead? Like if you're somebody who is constantly braiding or always in fear of some other next, culture or new movement, like what are we inhibiting?
Yeah.
We're inhibiting people's lives and their happiness.
Change has to happen, and it could come in small ways. Small changes can have huge, I don't know what's the word for it.
Ripples.
Ripples is a good word. So I think people are afraid of change, and that's where a lot of fears stem from. A lot of prejudice and discrimination, and a lot of like this hate movement is happening because of fear and change. But change is good, even in small amounts. I think small changes can have big impacts. And I think the both of us know this from personal experience. It's like small acts of kindness. They really do matter and they can have lasting effects. It is the kind people in my life growing up that has impacted my life. The teachers that gave me the attention I needed, even if it was small or months of just tutoring me, tutoring English, teachers who just like saw me for who I am, and teachers who acknowledged me or like even like teachers who touched on the Hmong history because it wasn't in history books without even knowing that I'm Hmong.
Mhm.
It's a surprising fact when they learn, oh, I have a Hmong student. Here I am teaching about Hmong history. Why don't you stand up and talk about it? You know?
Yeah.
But small acts of kindness, you know, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to cost you anything. Like, for example, the nonprofit I started,
Mhm.
For 2 years, I didn't spend any money, and it was just talking about them, bringing awareness about them, and like really advocating for them and trying to raise funds for them. And it was just small acts of kindness,
Mhm.
and really to just see what someone is going through and to be kind to them. You don't have to extend anything to them, like you don't have to start something, a movement to help them,
No.
but just to see what someone's going through and to be kind about it.
Mhm.
I think those things matter. But definitely change is good, and people should not be afraid of change.
Right.
Good change, anyways.
Yeah. It's hard to decipher sometimes, but
yeah.
absolutely. I really like. I think I've tapped on this before, but just the community and keeping it small, like the things that we can control are the things that we can, impact, and not feeling overwhelmed, not feeling buried in the chaos that is. Like those are a couple of things that can like really help my mentality or mentation feel a little happier in the fact that like, well, what I can control is like who I am and how I treat people. And I see that it's a positive, it's a net positive. And that to me fills my cup after listening to the news for too long or whatever else. There's so many ways to kind of help. And it's going to be the tiny things, like you said. It's perfect. I love that.
Yeah. I think we can create empathy out of these small changes.
Yeah.
Building trust, having compassion, small acts of kindness is how we can build empathy and build bridges.
Yeah.
Build bridges to bridge communities, to connect, to build trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Breaking barriers and building bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. What are your hopes for yourself, your family, and the Hmong community moving forward?
That's a great question. I mean, it's simple, really. Like, I really, truly hope, and this can sound like cliche or romantic or whatever. I really hope that we can all have a better future, like one that is built on equal opportunity and basic human rights for everyone, including refugees, immigrants, people of all backgrounds, and every community. Like, if they're gonna put it out there that, this is the land of the free, of, where dreams come true, where everyone is equal, I really want it to be that way. And it's a very simple hope, and I want it to be full of like people who go forward with kindness, who first think of being kind before they put an action out there or before they write something on social media, because that stuff is becoming so out of hand and toxic.
Yeah.
I can't go and read a happy story. I don't know. It feels like over the years of overcoming like all these obstacles and hardships, I just really want a safe place for my family. My mom doesn't go shopping without me. She doesn't go to the grocery store without me, out of fear that no one will be there to help her if something happens. That's very sad.
Yeah.
And for myself, if I'm gonna take a walk out in my own neighborhood, I don't want to have to carry a pepper spray with me everywhere I go. I don't know. I just want us to have this better future. It could be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be 2 or 3 years from now. It could be tomorrow. It could come sooner. I don't want to have to face discrimination because I'm a woman or because I'm Asian, or because I'm gonna tell stories that are female driven. I don't know.
Right, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But like those are my hopes for like my own community and my family. Like I want them to experience a happier life and a safer community with more opportunities, and that should be for every community, right? Of every background. I shouldn't, this should not be my hope, but it is.
I think it's a good one.
And for myself, I don't want to sound selfish, but like, I have like aspirations of becoming like a writer, actor, filmmaker, and I've had these goals for so long. Like I'm pursuing education in them. I'm now pursuing my master's in screenwriting, and I studied theater and English before that.
Yeah.
And of course, my hope is to be a working writer, a working filmmaker, a working actor, of course, a fairly paid one.
Yeah.
But another, small hope for myself, for the near future is like when I go out in public places, I would hope that if someone stares at me too long, it'll be for the right reasons and not the wrong ones. You know what I mean? Like, not for the way I look or the way I talk. I want them to stare at me because, I don't know, a publisher wrote a book that they liked, or I won an Oscar, did something notable. I don't know.
Yeah, celebrity stares versus, yeah, I like that.
Versus something that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
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 Because of who I am.
Right. Or what you look like, not even has anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. Okay. I like that. I think those are very fair hopes. I hope so too. I really do. I think that's it for the episode.
Great.
Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for answering all of my hard questions and resharing some hard things.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This has been The Experience. Thanks for tuning in, and join us next week where we talk to Gus Fimple about imports and potential tariffs in the wine community. Stay tuned.